Welcome back. This is the Robotics Program, Succession Planning Part 3. This is the final part of the succession planning program. So this part, we go into more detail in terms of the specific people who are going to be important for your program's development and sustainability. And so it's important to understand the roles, the responsibility, the skill sets of each of those individuals who are going to be part of your program. We're also going to go into sort of the how-to, and that is okay, once you've decided you're going to do a succession planning and you know who you're going to who you need to be replacing, how do you go about doing that? And we'll talk about that in the latter part of this section. So robotics program, like I said, is very, very people dependent. It's all part of your infrastructure, and your infrastructure is about one of the 7 elements that are going to be really driving the success of your program. Putting some investment in the people part of this is going to be really important. So let's talk about somebody that you probably not think is really essential for programs. But I'm going to tell you, in my experience in multiple programs and different types of groups that I've worked in over the years, there's this, they come with a lot of different titles. This is just one title, administrative assistant. You could have a program administrator, whatever it is. These people are extremely helpful. And I've even been in programs and developed projects at times where I was this person. I did all of these things on this list. And that's the person you want to have, because having done it, I can tell you, it's a lot of work. And if you don't have the skill set, it's a real difficult one to pick up overnight. A lot of physicians just don't do this, not because they can't do it, just because it's just generally not something that they're trained to do. But you need to be paying attention to this because you want this person on your team. They're so fundamental for the sustainability of your team. They're basically the glue that holds everything together. They are the administrative coordinator. They take care of all the logistical support, things that a lot of people either don't want to do or don't know how to do. Things like arranging meetings. They reserve your meeting rooms. They'll order up the refreshments. They find the budget under which to build the refreshments. They set up the teleconferencing and the AV, the audiovisual capability of a room. They're going to distribute all your meeting notices. They're the ones that are going to send out the invites to the people who are going to be part of your meetings. They develop the agendas. They distribute other program materials, and there will be plenty of stuff. When you start looking at evidence of different things, you're going to want to be able to have that person who takes care of that. They record your meeting minutes and attendance. There's nothing worse than going to a meeting and then spending the first 5 or 10 minutes, looking for a volunteer to record your meeting minutes. If you got somebody there doing it for you that's their job, that's beautiful. That's a great thing. You're not going to be wasting time every meeting trying to find somebody who's going to do that. And I've had times where I had to do it, lead a meeting and take the minutes and attendance at the same time. It's no fun. It's just a distraction. So you want somebody who can do that for you. Maintain a membership list. You have to have a list somewhere. You have to know how to get a hold of your people, and they have to have that contact information. And they also have to protect it too. There's times when you just have to say, hey, listen, we do not distribute our list to other people, and there may be those, particularly on the vendor side, who might want to know who's on that committee, and they may want a copy of that list so they can call people. And you really don't want to. You want to have somebody who's going to protect it for you. You also want to be able to store your program documents. I'm a big fan of like SharePoints or Dropbox or something like that, where people can have access to the document list, the agendas, the meeting minutes 24/7. That's the kind of world we live in nowadays, and if you have internet access anywhere in the world, you should be able to view those documents at any time of the day. And I think that's important to maintain that type of program, because a program where people feel like they have access to the information of the program anytime, anywhere, that's a really, really big boost for your program. And it's really not that it's not that costly to do. So you want to have an administrative assistant who's going to monitor that for you. And they also follow up on RSVPs, and that gets to sort of one of my kind of pet peeves about administrative assistants, and that you really have to make sure this is somebody who knows how to coordinate the affairs of physicians. And that's why I put down their medical staff experience, because medical staffs over the decades have mastered this. The success of any medical staff is entirely dependent on that medical staff office of making sure that physicians are showing up at meetings and they're getting those notices and participate. And so they've mastered how to do it. They're really, really good at it. In fact, they don't just send out emails. They may actually go and knock on doctors' doors and tell them they have to be at a meeting, or they may find them in the operating room and remind them that they have to be at a meeting, or whatever it is. They'll do what it takes to get them. You need somebody who's going to be that persistent, who's going to go after physicians and make sure that they're at these meetings. It's the nature of how medical staff has mastered this process over the years. I've had the mistake of having somebody who didn't really understand that, how to coordinate and get a hold of physicians, and would just send out an email, and I'd said, God, half of them don't even read their email, let alone, the ones that come from the hospital. So I just think you need to have somebody who's going to follow up on RSVPs and get an answer for you, because if they can't get an answer for you, that's when they need to get a hold of the physician lead of the program, and say, you're going to have to call this person, you're going to have to, because I can't get a hold of them. But at least you got to have somebody who's willing to do that. So it's important that they understand that. Also, remember, they're going to have some fundamental skills like in Microsoft Office or some other similar type of program, because they're going to be storing and maintaining and developing documents for you. They also have to be able to do email distribution and invites, whether it's through Outlook or any other type of invitation program. It's entirely up to you, but you have to have somebody who has that skill set. Like I said, I think medical staff experience is a big plus, because medical staff, they're just experts at that kind of stuff. And so having somebody who understands that is going to be a big boost for your program. Administrator representative, I've had people say, well, do we really have to have an administrator on our committee? We really don't want to do that. And that's a huge mistake. Do not make that mistake. You want that person there. They are your liaison to your administration. That person is going to be critical for your program success. They're a part of the hospital administration. They represent the hospital administration. Any communication that's coming back and forth from the program to the hospital, particularly to non-clinical staff or senior management, this is your person who's going to be doing that primarily. Now, I think a physician lead will typically be invited to C-suites or meetings, or at least with C-suite members, to be able to update people on the program. But it's nice to have somebody who's already there and is already doing it on a regular basis. You're going to be working with supply chain. And if you have a value analysis program, you want somebody who understands what the goals of those programs are, because they're probably going to want to work with your robotics committee. And I think that's a good thing. You just have to have somebody who has knowledge of that area and is willing to participate with you. Remember, probably the biggest role they have, though, is they secure the resources to support the program. So before I was talking about administrative assistant, this is the person you go to and say, we need an administrative assistant. And we're only meeting, maybe it's once a quarter, once every other month, or once a month. But we need somebody to has devoted 2 or 3 hours a month for our program who can help us coordinate these things for us. That's not a lot to ask from a hospital administration, and they typically have somebody who they can assign to do that. But you really want to have this person be the one who secures that resource for you, because then that person's time is accounted for, and there's no arguments coming from their management saying like, oh, I didn't know that they were doing this. As long as that's there, everyone's bought into it. It's nice to have this person on your team. Remember, they're also you want somebody who has some not just management experience, but also experience with the budgets and capital purchasing processes, because you are inevitably going to be running into this in your program. Meaning, you want somebody to be able to guide your committee through this. If you've never been through a budgeting process before, if you've never been through a capital purchasing process before, you want to have a guide. This is not something to do on your own the first time. Have somebody who knows your organization and how that occurs. As an example, let's say, for example, you have a perioperative director and you want to expand your capacity. So you want to add time on your robotics room from, maybe it's 8 hours a day and you want to expand it up to 12 hours a day. Well, that's basically a 50% increase in your robotic room budget. The money doesn't grow on trees. It has to come from somewhere, and somebody's going to have to find it. It's nice to have an administrative representative who understands what's going on in budgets across the system and can find that money for you, because that's how you can do it in the middle of the year. Now, if you can't do that, then you want to have that person who's going to speak for you and ask for that additional coverage for you in the budget in the following year for when there comes budget season. So just make sure you have somebody around. Remember also, you're probably going to be involved in capital purchases, particularly robots. They're all capital purchases. And you want to have somebody who knows that process, who can walk you through it, talk you through it. It's not always real easy to understand the first time you go through it, but having somebody there in that position who can guide you through it is really going to take a lot of pressure off of you. And I think they will also better prepare you for how to go about doing it and increase the probability you're going to get what you really need for your program. So it's also nice to have that person. I also think that you really want to have somebody who has who has a stake in the program. So if this administrative representative is somebody who has budgetary or management experience or management oversight of, say, the OR or of the supplies or capital or something like that, that's the kind of person you want on your team, because they will be great representatives for you. And so you should take full advantage of them. I mean, I think they just do a tremendous job. And not only that, but they appreciate being part of the team as well. Remember, the hospital made a big investment in the robot, and they'd like to see it be successful as well. And there's no reason why you can't have them share in that success. Data analyst. Performance improvement is going to require some type of data analyst. And they are your data expert. They're the ones who are going to do this. And I've, those responsibilities there, I've done every single one of those. And I can tell you, they each have their separate skill set. If you're going to get somebody who's just going to abstract data elements, that's great, meaning they know their databases and they can pull stuff out of it. But if they can't do any type of analytics on it, any type of statistical work on it, you're going to have to find somebody who can do that. And then they have to interpret that data, right? Remember, statistics comes with, results. And when you look at the results, somebody has to, I think with some clinical background, look at that data and convert it into useful information for the program to act on. And then someone's got to come and present the data to robotics committee. And it's really difficult to find one person who can do all four of those and do them really well. You may find somebody who can do the first two, but when you get to numbers 3 and 4 on the bullet list there, it's really difficult to do that. I typically found myself doing 3 and 4, and I would have other people do 1 and 2. But I've done all 4 of them, and I could tell you they each have their own separate skill set, and you want to find somebody who can do all of that. It'd be really nice. If you can't find one person, then find 2 people. There's nothing wrong with one person abstracting the information and somebody else doing the statistical analysis, and maybe the physician lead doing the interpretation and presenting it to the robotics committee. That's perfectly acceptable. You just have to be able to get all these bases covered. And obviously, if they're going to be doing any type of statistical analysis, they're really going to have some advanced training in statistics. This isn't basic statistics anymore. Now we're getting into a little bit more advanced. And if you have that on your team, great, you're way ahead of the game. And if you don't, go find it, because you're going to need it. You want performance improvement, that's what you're going to have. And so you have to make a good case for it and make sure that the people who are going to secure this, remember the administrative representative, who are going to secure this resource, understand that. And that's why it's important for your program to succeed. Without it, you're going to struggle. If you don't have a good PI program, good performance improvement program, and you're not backed with data, you're going to struggle. You really are. And so don't get yourself in that position. Don't set yourself up for failure. You want to be successful, and this is one way to do it. Multidisciplinary leads. This tends to be multidisciplinary in function. They are your specialty representatives for your program. It doesn't matter. I think you should have an anesthesiologist. There's a lot of things that happen robotics that are slightly different, particularly in terms of patient positioning and things like that. So it's important to get them involved in it. I think that if the other specialties, if you have CV, ENT, general surg, gyne, urology, colorectal, whoever else, it's always nice to get somebody on the representative side of it. I would try to avoid doing what I saw one of our facilities do, which was they originally started out with one robot. They had it was only used by gynecologists, and they wanted to have a robotics committee. So what they did is they set up the robotics committee under their Department of OBGYN. Sure enough, a couple years later, some general surgeons joined, a urologist joined. They wanted to be part of the robotics committee, and they had bylaws and rules and regulations that said that you had to be part of the department in order to be a member of that committee. And so they were really more like invited guests, and they felt like they were really outliers, and they were always getting outvoted by the gynecologists who made up the majority of the people on the committee. And so this is why I'm a fan of representative government, which is you really don't want to get into a situation where you have 5 on one side and 1 on the other side, so to speak. You want to be able to, you want the general surgeons to come, or the urologists, or the CVT, or the gynecologist, whoever, to show up at that meeting and feel like they're represented as an equal at the table. And sometimes it's difficult to do that in certain types of models, and so you may want to set this up from the very beginning. But either way, remember, you're going to want representation. And so those people have to be somebody who I think is really represents them and is willing to accept the responsibilities of that position. They are the liaison between the specialty and the robotics committee. They have to represent that specialty. The last thing you want to do is go back to, say, like a division meeting of urology and say, well, we discussed it at robotics, and they'd be like, we never heard about it. And you're thinking, well, why didn't your liaison come back and tell you about it? Because that's their job. And so they have to be able to do that for you. They participate in developing and supporting the quality, operational, financial objectives of the robotics program. They have to. That's part of being part of that committee. If you want to improve the quality, if you want to improve the utilization and decrease costs, you're going to have to participate in this. And so that's almost like a job requirement for this position. They have to do peer review. I think that's just essential. If you're going to be in a leadership position, you're going to be looking at cases, and you should accept those types of responsibilities that come with being a peer reviewer. And also, at some point, obviously, you want to have your credentials and privileges updated or even established. In order to do that, you want somebody who really understands it. So obviously, they have to have credentials and privileges in that specialty on the robot. So it's going to be an important part of making sure when you're out there looking for those leads, find people who can fill those roles. So here's a tip. Consider outsourcing necessary resources. And I did this at one point with our data. We were contracted with Premier, who did a lot of our data analytics, and I would just simply call up our Premier consultant and say, here's the type of data I need. This is the format I need it in. And she would go in and abstract it. She would analyze it for me and give me a kind of a surface evaluation of it, and then I would review it myself and then present it to the committee. That's a great way of getting data. If you don't have it, if you got someone in the organization who's already using a data source like that, tap into it and outsource that particular resource. And I think that's possible for a lot of these other ones. You just want to be able to get the resources you need in your committee. And usually it's data is the one that usually a lot of people run into. So that's the one I would consider first if you really needed to do it. So how about identifying the talent pool? I kind of alluded to this earlier. Institute a designee for all committee members. So if you come on the committee, you're on the robotics committee, first thing you ask that person is what do you do? What do you see as your responsibilities, and what kind of skill sets you bring, and all of that we talked about earlier. But this is the time we want to say, so if there was somebody going to replace you, or if you wanted to have a designee for your position, who would it be? And have that person come back with a name, because that's the name you want to add to your list. Now, it may not be somebody who you use down the road when you're going to look for someone to take on their position if they happen to leave the organization, but at least you have a name. You're starting somewhere, and that's always better than nowhere. So you let your committee members basically be your talent management program. They're the ones who are out there looking for it. So let them do it. The other one is request recommendations from your stakeholder groups. When you're out talking to stakeholder groups and you're talking up your robotics program, if you've got a position that you're kind of worried about, just say, hey, listen, we're going to probably need some more help with our data. Does anybody know anybody, who in the organization is doing this? And you'd be surprised. Stakeholder groups will come forward with names of people that can help you. If you have any communications, if you're sending out a newsletter and say whatever, you have a position, you realize, wow, we don't have a urologist representing us, just drop it in the newsletter. Nothing wrong with that. And those folks sometimes read those things, and someone will come forward and say, hey, I know Dr. So-and-so said he'd be interested in joining you guys. And so that's always a nice way to tap into the talent pool. You also coordinate your efforts with your administrative medical leadership. They may be grooming people in your organization for certain leadership roles or for certain things that they want to develop them into. And so talk to them. If you've got somebody that you're thinking about, you say, hey, I think we need a designee for our nursing leadership position. Do you have anybody in mind? And be like, oh, yeah, if there's somebody we're grooming for a leadership position, this would be a nice way to test and see how they do in that role. So it's always nice to talk to them, because they may have people that they're already thinking about, and not only that, but they sort of vetted them for you because they've already identified that they have potential for as a leadership in some other capacity. So it's nice to tap into that one. Also, remember to vet all your potential candidates with your stakeholders, and especially key opinion leaders. And the key opinion leaders, remember, these are people who don't necessarily have a leadership title, but everybody knows that their word tends to be much more influential than other people on the medical staff or on your nursing staff. Talk to them. Sometimes it's a manager up on the med surg ward. Just go up and talk to that person and say, hey, we're thinking about so and so for our committee. I'm not really sure that's a good person. Have you thought about so and so? Or no, I think that's a great person. Get their opinion on it. Find out what they think, because if you can sell them there's a really good chance that they'll be able to sell everybody else. And that's always a big plus for you. And then the last one here, become a committee where everyone wants to be a member. Become the desired committee to be on. And this happened to me one time. I was in a work group, and we always had fun in this group. We're a highly productive work group, and I remember we were walking out, getting ready to leave a meeting, and there was another group that was waiting for us out in the hallway, and they were kind of poking in. There was a little window there, and they were all kind of looking in through the window. And when we finished up our meeting, we're all laughing and joking. We're walking out, and and I could see that they all just had like this really glum look on their face, like they were just dreading whatever meeting it was that they were walking into. And finally, one person just looked over us and just says, "Boy, what does it take to become a member of your meeting, your group?" They wanted to be there, and that was just such a cool compliment, And I just thought, well, I don't know what it is you're going into, but I'm glad I'm in the group that I'm in. Become that group that other people want to be a part of, and that's the cool thing about it is if you become that, all of a sudden the talent starts seeking you out. You don't have to go out there looking for it; they start lining up to get inside. So it's a nice thing. So when you run a really, really good program, that's the kind of thing. That's what happens. You attract talent, and that's where you want to be. So once you attract talent, once you get the candidate list, inform them, talk to them, say, hey, we're thinking about making you our data analyst for the robotics committee. We're thinking about asking you to do that. I know so and so is already doing it, but they're retiring at the end of the year, and so we're looking for somebody to fill that role. Let them know, interview them, tell them what the expectations are. This is, it'll probably take about 3 hours of work a month or something like that. And that's something that people can now think about. And they have to decide if they really want to do it or not. You can also talk to the benefits of the membership. Hey, you'll be an insider in robotics. You'll understand what's going on in the program. That's really important for a lot of people. And so the other thing is, once they kind of get a sense of what it's about, and you get a sense of that they're thinking about it, confirm their acceptance. Say, hey, are you willing to do this? And if they say yes, notify your stakeholders. Say, hey, we got so-and-so who we're thinking about as a candidate for taking over, say, as a nursing lead or something like that. Just make sure your stakeholders are okay with it. And once they are, move on to the next phase, which is provide the critical development experiences. This is not a passive process. Do not think that someone's just going to walk in on day one and know what they need to do. You have to start grooming them. You have to start putting them in positions. And I did this years ago with somebody, and I asked a physician who I was thinking about moving into a more of a leadership role. And I said, hey, can you cover this committee for me? I'm going to be a little late. Just get it started and get things rolling on the agenda, and then I'll come in, I'll take over. And he was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And I walked in, and that was probably about 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, something like that. And the nothing on the agenda got accomplished. Nothing. And so I just came in and started the meeting, and we were running late, obviously. And later on, I said, hey, what happened back there? And he said, well, I was waiting for you to show up. I said, I know, but I thought, remember we talked, you were going to run the agenda. He goes, yeah, I know, but I got in there and I thought maybe it's better if you did it. And I said, I can't, you can't do that. If you're going to be, I really like to see you take over this committee someday. If you're going to do that, you're going to have to run the meeting, and you have to learn how to do it. And I said, tell you what, at such and such time, let's try this again. I really like to see you kind of step in there. And he said, sure. And so, when that person comes back and they perform the way you really wanted them to, now they get the feedback. They get to get better at doing that particular role. They start feeling comfortable with it. And to me, that's the progress. That's the milestones you're looking at for a candidate. So develop some milestones for them, things that you expect them to be able to do. And that becomes the way to develop them over time. So it is time when either you or somebody else has to back off of position for whatever reason, you feel comfortable that your replacement is going to jump in there and know exactly what to do and how to do it. So the other part of this is transitioning. So once you get somebody groomed and they've been through that process, pick a succession date. I like the best thing is coordinate with an event like a robotics committee meeting or whatever meeting that you're going to make announcements at. But usually it's something like that. Make sure to give some pre-notification to your stakeholders, particularly your key opinion leaders, and let them know, hey, on this date, this is when so-and-so is going to take over. And another part is do a formal announcement. Include the succession date and the possible reason for transition. If so-and-so is retiring, Dr. So-and-so is going to take over as the new program director. It's always good to make these formal announcements, let people know. Include the candidate's roles, responsibilities, and skill sets. Dr. So-and-so has had so many years doing this and blah, blah. He's one of our busiest surgeons on the robot or something, something along those lines, and make it a formal announcement. There's nothing worse than having somebody, especially a leader, walk into a new role and nobody has made an announcement. And that years ago, that happened to me one time. I walked in and stepped into an area that I was medical director of, and the nursing manager came up to me and said, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm the new medical director." And she said, "Really?" Because nobody told us about that. And I went, "Oh, okay." So I had to do my own announcement, and we worked it out. Actually, it ended up being a great working relationship over time, but it was really awkward that first day. Neither of us knew how to act, because nobody made a formal announcement. And so I learned the hard way, in a very personal experience. So make a formal announcement, make it easier for the people to adapt to that new role, and that's how you do it. And it's the best way to do it. I think it's the most professional way to do it. So, and not only that, but it's a great courtesy to not only the person who's taken on the role, but the people who are now going to be working with that person. They know what to expect and when to expect it. So here's a quote. This is from Benjamin Franklin. I'm going to close with this. By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. So if you're not making a succession plan, you are in some ways starting to create problems in the infrastructure of your program. Succession planning is essential for your development of your people who are going to run your program. Your people are essential for the infrastructure, and infrastructure is essential for the success of your program. And so you have to see that connection. And so it's important to have a plan in place. I don't think it's really that difficult to put the one together. And like I said, just contact me and I'll send you a copy of the checklist for doing so. But I think it's really important that you begin it today if you haven't already started to do it. And so with that, I'd just like to thank you for listening to this program. Hopefully you'll be able to contact me if you have any questions or concerns or comments. Feel free to send me an email to terryloftusmd@gmail.com, or you can visit my website at www.loftushealth.com. There's a contact form in there. You can just send it in through the contact form, or like I said, directly to my email. And if you want a startup kit, just say, "Hey, Terry, can you send me a robotics startup kit?" And I'll send it to you as a zip drive. It includes the checklist that I talked about earlier. And so if you want a copy of the checklist, I'll just send you the whole zip drive with all of the documents. I think you'll find them very helpful. And I think as soon as you can get your succession plan in place, the more likely you are to be successful with your program. And I'd like to wish you great success in the future with your program, because that's what I want to ultimately see. A lot of successful programs. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye and thank you once again, and have a great day.